We are going to be taking a look at the impact of social and emotional learning on academic outcomes for struggling learners. But I want us to really think about our why. Why are we here tonight? I shared with you why I'm here. But why are you here? I mean, I don't think it's by accident that you chose to spend your Tuesday night at 6 o'clock on a webinar. So I'd like for you to think about your why for being here. And then I'm going to open the floor up. If you would like to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and explain why you're here, or share why you're here, or if you want to put it in the chat, either one, I'd like for us to determine that up front. So I'm going to open it up to anyone.
Well, I'll go ahead and start only because I don't know how long I have. You know, I have an almost 2-year-old, so he's in charge for now. But I'm Miss Miller. I teach in the elementary literacy and special education program at UCA. And I'm excited to be here tonight because this is the reason I got into teaching is because of my experience as a learner and wanted to make a difference. And I've always been able to build positive relationships and rapport with students, parents, co-workers, just everyone. I've always just kept the air of, positivity. And that's something that I've, prided myself on. And, with this semester, it has been the most challenging semester for me because for some reason, I don't think that I've been able to do that on a level that I normally have. And so I said, I need to reach outside of myself and see, hey, how can I look at this from a different perspective? What are the students seeing? What is being seen from, outside of me? And I've had one-on-one meetings with my students, this whole week. And so I'm gaining, a better perspective of how they've experienced things. But I thought, hey, with this topic tonight, maybe I can hear some other stuff that I haven't thought about up to now.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine, for sharing. I think that's interesting that you've had one-on-ones this week, because that is something that Emmeline and Mallorey are going to really focus on, is the student perspective, because so many times we look at the research, what it has to say. We talk to our colleagues, but a lot of times we forget to go to the student directly and ask, what do you need? So I want to applaud you for those one-on-ones, because I'm sure you found out a lot of good information today from meeting with them. So that's Catherine. Anybody else want to share? Okay, well, it looks like it's, if you're looking at what I'm looking at, I think it's colleagues and the 3 presenters. Am I right?
My name's Jerry, and I'm actually a mom.
Oh, okay, you just popped on my screen. Yay!
I am a mom of a almost 9-year-old boy who suffers from dyslexia and severe anxiety. And so I also have a medical background, so not teaching, and just wanted to see and interested in what recommendations you guys had.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. You were not showing on my screen, so I'm so glad to hear you speak up. Actually, the presentation is geared toward parents, but what we present is appropriate for educators as well as you as a parent. So I hope you find beneficial information, and I think you will enjoy hearing from the other presenters, the co-presenters, because I think you will have a connection with them. Okay, well, let's move on if nobody else would like to share. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I want you to just think to yourself. I'm not asking you to share out. This is just your think time. But do you believe every child deserves a quality education that recognizes their unique needs? Do you believe every child deserves opportunities to develop skills needed for academic success and fulfilling careers? Do you believe every child deserves teachers who care about them? Do you believe every child deserves to feel safe and welcome in their schools? Do you believe every child deserves schools that provide students the resources they need to reach their full potential? Do you believe every child deserves instruction that motivates and engages them? And do you believe every child deserves an honest and accurate education to help create a better future? If you said yes to all of those things, then you are an SEL, social and emotional learning leader. So you're probably wondering, what is SEL? She keeps using this word. Some of us are familiar with it, some of us may not be. But SEL is, the way I look at it, it is a process that all of us, regardless of our age, it could be a child from the time they're born all the way up through adulthood, where they acquire these social and emotional learning skills that help them be able to recognize their emotions. That could be happiness, sadness, loneliness, frustration, lots of emotions that we all experience, but recognizing them and realizing that they're real and it's okay to have emotions, but then going a step further and figuring out how to manage those emotions so that we can build strong relationships with others, have empathy for others, learn from others, and ultimately be able to make responsible decisions so that we can be successful in life. And this information actually comes from CASEL, CASEL, which I consider the guru of social and emotional learning. It's the guru of SEL nationally and internationally. And CASEL stands for Collaborative Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it is a group of multitude of people. So this group does lots of research on social and emotional learning and the impact that it has on students, as well as families, teachers, administrators, and communities. So the information I'm going to present tonight is mostly from CASEL, and you'll see down at the bottom of most of the screen, the slides, you're going to see that information. So the graphic that is on the screen actually depicts the definition that is on the other side of the screen, and we're going to dig a little deeper into that graphic and what that means. So I said a while ago, I'm glad Jerry's here because this is geared toward parents. And it's because parents are our children's number one teacher when it comes to social and emotional learning. SEL starts in the home. It starts in the home. Parents are their first teacher, and they're modeling for them the social and emotional skills that they need so that they can then go into the school setting or community settings, and other people start to contribute to their social and emotional learning at that point. But the most important piece starting out at birth will be parents or caregivers, those people that are there with them day in and day out. They are their first teachers. CASEL has done, a lot of research on the benefits of social and emotional learning. And when we deal with students or our own children that are struggling academically, I think you're going to see that the benefits of teaching social and emotional learning are well worth our time at home as well as in our schools. Here are some of the outcomes that have been highlighted by CASEL through many, many studies that they have conducted. You'll see that science links social and emotional learning to student gains. And when we talk about student gains, that doesn't just mean academics. You know, we have this highly intense focus on academics, which is super important. But CASEL comes from the perspective, if we don't start with the social and emotional piece first, which they say is the whole plate, and then everything else is on top of that plate, then students have barriers to outcomes. So through their research, student gains means there are gains in social and emotional skills that are acquired. It shows that students have improved attitudes about self, others, and school. It has been shown to have a positive impact on positive classroom environment or behavior. And the last one is that if SEL is being taught at home as well as in our schools, that there can be an 11% point gain on standardized achievement tests. But it doesn't stop there. Their research also indicates that there are reduced risk for failure because you'll see that conduct problems start to decrease, as well as the emotional distress that some of our students experience. And Jerry mentioned about anxiety with her child. So by focusing on teaching our students the social and emotional skills that they need, it can help them not just in the academic area, but all areas of their lives. And so this slide actually shows some of the positive outcomes from teaching social and emotional learning. Castle has a framework that they use that actually has 5 competencies. And here they are on the screen. And I'm sorry, I'm having to move y'all's pictures all over my screen so that I can get to where I can see. So the 5 broad competencies that Castle uses is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And it's really that definition that I gave a while ago of social and emotional learning. We have to be aware of our own emotions, our thoughts, and our values. Then we have to know how to manage them so that we are socially aware of what's going on in our lives and how we interact with others so that we can build strong relationships and then ultimately be able to make responsible decisions. So these are the 5 broad competencies that Castle outlines for us. And it's a framework is what it is that fosters knowledge, skills, and attitudes across all 5 of these competencies. So let's look a little deeper at each one of the competencies. Self-awareness. This is where our kiddos need to be able to understand, once again, their own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior across context. If you'll look below, there are some examples of how our children can become more aware of their emotions, how we can help them become more aware of their emotions, such as a young child. When they're crying, help them identify what they're feeling. Are they mad? Are they frustrated? They need to recognize the emotion and be able to name it and understand it's okay to feel that way. They need to be able to understand themselves. They need to have a growth mindset. So Castle fosters self-awareness. After we help our kids become self-aware, then it's about helping them be a self-manager. Okay, I'm feeling frustrated. What am I supposed to do? I have this assignment and I don't even know how to do it. I'm frustrated. I might be crying. So what do? We have to teach them strategies to manage that frustration so that they can tackle the assignment. And as you look at the examples that are here, once again, helping them manage their emotions, helping them have stress management strategies. This is where planning and organization comes in. This is where they need help after being able to identify those emotions. What do I do with that emotion that I'm feeling? And then here's social awareness. This is where our kiddos need to be able to look through the lens of someone else. They need to look at their perspective and seek to understand before being understood, as Stephen Covey says. They need to be able to empathize with others. They need to learn about diverse backgrounds and cultures. And if you look below on this slide, there are some examples of how that can occur. I'm going to give you a second to look at that. One of my favorite ones is about recognizing strengths in others. This is something that we talk about in our class a lot. Emmeline's on here since she's with me this semester. And it's because it's a team effort. You know, I have strengths, but I have weaknesses. Emmeline has strengths, but she has weaknesses or areas of growth. That's because we're human. None of us are ever going to be perfect. And honestly, we're all struggling learners at some point. So it's about learning how to form those relationships so that we can help one another so that we're better together. The next one is about relationship skills. This is the ability to establish and maintain healthy, supportive relationships. This is what our business people are asking for. When students graduate, they're wanting people coming into their positions that can build relationships with others, that can work with other people, that can problem solve together, that can resolve conflict on their own. They're looking for those positive relationship builders, good communicators. But that doesn't come naturally for our kids. We have to teach them how to do that. And then ultimately, you put all of these things together so that students can make responsible decisions. Those decisions are about their personal behaviors as well as their school social interactions. This is where we want them to be able to be in a classroom and understand that there's an assignment that maybe they don't know how to do, but they can make a responsible decision by seeking help from peers, but also from their teacher, being an advocate for themselves. This is where they need that responsible decision-making model, okay? They need to be able to look at it from all perspectives. If I make this decision this way, what would the outcomes possibly be? If I make it this way, what could the outcomes be? So we have to teach them how to look at their decision through multiple lenses. And these 5 competencies start at home, but they don't end there. These 5 competencies carry over all of these settings. You can see that it has classrooms, schools, at home, and within our communities. So we need our kids to learn these 5 competencies, but not just learn them, but how to implement them in these different settings so that they can be successful in their lives. They can be successful socially and emotionally. They can be successful in relationships. They can be successful academically. We're helping them acquire social and emotional skills that they need so that they can go forth and feel confident and not being perfect, because we're never going to be perfect, being confident and knowing that they're human, they have emotions, they know how to manage them so that they can build strong relationships and have empathy for others so that they can make good decisions. Here's what that can look like in the classroom. So as a parent, you want social and emotional learning for your child in the school. So here are some of the things that you can be looking for. Is social and emotional learning being explicitly taught in your child's classroom? Are they learning how to work with others? Cooperative learning groups, project-based learning, where they have to interact with others. They have to problem solve together. And do you see evidence of social and emotional learning and the academic curriculum being integrated or married together, such as if they're reading a book, is there a social and emotional learning focus that goes along with it? Are they learning how to organize their time? So you're looking for the integration of social and emotional learning and academics in your child's classroom. My computer's slow, so give me just a second. We're going to look at what that looks like in the school setting. There it goes. Let me back it up. It went forward twice. Okay, so here's what to look for from a parent perspective about SEL in, well, I guess my slide went away. Sorry. In the school setting, even though the slide's not there, I'll talk about it. SEL is strong for students if it's taught in the classroom, but it's stronger if it's taught in the classroom as well as in the school. When it's a school focus and students are learning about social and emotional learning in classrooms, in hallways, in cafeterias, in assemblies, from grade level to grade level, that's where our students begin to learn lots of skills that they carry over. They're able to apply. You will see that students actually will come home and they will be teaching you social and emotional learning because they are so integrated into that mindset in every aspect of that school setting. But it doesn't stop there. Let's look at what that looks like within our families. Research shows, or it suggests, that evidence-based SEL programs are more effective when they extend into the home. So as I said, your child may be coming home and may be teaching you SEL because that's what they see and that's what they hear on a daily basis. So when they're coming home, take time to listen to them. Seek to understand what they're learning and then see how you can piggyback on that at home to reinforce that learning. And then the last one, which I'm just going to mention, is about communities. Ultimately, we want our kiddos to leave our schools, leave our homes, and be productive citizens. So social and emotional learning is so important at every age, every step along the way, so that when they do leave our homes and they leave our schools, we are confident that they have the skills that they need to go forth and thrive and be a contributing person to society. So I've given you the background knowledge. I'm going to stop sharing of social and emotional learning and the benefits of implementing it in our homes and in our schools. But that's the research part. To me, when it gets real is when you hear it from a personal perspective. And in this case, of students who understand how powerful social and emotional learning is on their own personal academic outcomes. And we have two co-presenters I introduced them a while ago, Emmeline Davis and Mallorey Jones, and they each have their own personal story about the impact of social and emotional learning on their academic outcomes. And so I'm going to toss it to Mallorey, if you don't mind. Mallorey, if you will take it from here, introduce yourself a little bit more and share your personal story.
Sure. So my name is Mallorey Jones. I graduated with my undergrad from UCA in 2017 and my master's in 2020. I am an assistant principal in the Cabot School District, and I'm the digital coordinator also. I actually work in an alternative learning environment, so I don't have a traditional school setting that I work in. I found out in college that as I'm learning how to give a dyslexia screener to a student, I realized I could not pass it myself. It was very difficult for me. And come to find out, I have dyslexia. I'm dyslexic. And after talking to my parents about it, after I had this, aha moment, my mom said, yes, baby, I didn't know it was dyslexia, but you didn't read until you were 8. I always knew that something was different as far as, like people could read a lot faster than me. I never did well on the fluency readers ever when they checked fluency. Comprehension is not my thing. I'll have to read something 4, 5, 6 times. I'm constantly taking notes in the sides. It's something that I've always struggled with. I didn't realize that words didn't fall off the page for everyone, or that people didn't skip lines, or, they see a word and it looks like a different word as far as the shape of the actual word goes. And that's what I associated it with instead of the word that's actually written on the page. So all through school, statistically speaking, I should not have a master's degree. I should not be doing what I'm doing when you hear all the negativity surrounding dyslexia. However, I really think the relationships that I have with teachers that I, grew up with and had in elementary school and even high school made a big difference. They taught me coping skills. I didn't realize they were coping skills at the time, but looking back, that's exactly what they were. Taught me how to read and how to compensate, basically, because I didn't read like the traditional student. I also think having a strong forefront at home made a big difference for me. She mentioned it earlier, Dr. Calhoun is my mom, so she has that educational background, but it was more than that. It was figuring out what worked for me. So one thing that I know for sure has helped me all through is the planning aspect in the organization. I'm pretty sure when I was in first grade, my mom probably bought me a calendar because I'm such an organized person as far as I've got to have my calendar with me. That helps so much. And I think that it probably came about because of that sense of, I just felt very disorganized. It was an emotion that I was feeling. I did not feel, I wasn't as confident. I didn't feel as qualified. And I know that sounds weird for a first grader, second grader, but when everyone around you is reading and you're not, you're in the red group and of the reading circles and everyone else is in the blue and green, that kind of has a stigma attached to it. So I think that was something that made a big difference, and still to this day, I'm a big planner. Step-by-step instructions have been something that were really big, as far as like creating a list and checking them off. I had really great advocates. My parents advocated for me. My mom never missed a parent-teacher conference, not one time. And even though she was an educator herself, her and my dad would make separate arrangements to meet with those teachers if needed. But I'll be honest, the biggest thing is relationships. rapport and relationships. If I had not had probably the second and third grade teacher that I had, they were strong in their content area, but they are, and it makes me want to tear up because they're still so special to me, especially my third grade teacher. I really think if I had not had them in my educational experience or my journey, I'm not sure that I would be as confident of a reader as I am today, or, you know, be, I don't want to say who I am today, but be in the position that I am and have the confidence to continue to go to school and, you know, gain these degrees and put myself out there and, you know, tell my story like this. But they taught some really great coping skills because I had that relationship with them. So through that relationship, I learned a lot, that they were advocating for me, and that they were able to give me more opportunities and different opportunities. So what I was doing might not look like the traditional student, but I was still meeting the goals that they had set for me. And eventually my goals and the traditional student goals matched up. Um, and I mean, that's ultimately what you want, right? Differentiation. I know that that's always going to be a hot topic in education, I think, but it doesn't always have to look the same, but the end goal is always the same. So as long as, you know, the student or your child is getting there, I think whatever works best for them is something that, you know, you kind of have to figure out, but you do that through relationships and allowing that, you know, freedom of conversation. I feel like, you know, I'm sure that my mom could attest to this. I was so young in elementary school, but I imagine that I was probably, you know, as a struggling learner, not super excited to go to school. I can vividly remember sitting in my second grade class and we had a substitute one day. And it was when we had those big, thick textbooks and we were reading, we were popcorn reading out loud. And I can remember sitting there thinking, please don't call on me. Or I would do the, let me read ahead real fast and not pay attention to what's actually happening so I can prepare for, you know, if I do get called on. So I think just having that environment that students feel comfortable and confident in is very, very important. But that goes back to at home also. Your child has to feel, you know, loved and validated, and, you know, ensure them that what they're feeling is okay. But we can't just give all the problems. We have to find some solutions also. So, you know, working together. And a lot of times it does involve the school. I told you guys I work in an alternative learning environment. Sometimes we are working hand in hand with the parent to try to, you know, diminish the behavior or, you know, encourage or motivate students to succeed academically. I mean, there's a lot of different skills and strategies out there to do things like that, but it's all going to be different for each student or, you know, for each child. Personally, my sister, my brother, and we are not the same. We are all three very different people. We're all motivated by very different things. However, you know, we're all successful. And I think that comes back to, you know, my parents just knew what, you know, what was best for each of us, how to communicate with each of us, you know, how to ensure that our needs were being met, even though it didn't always look the same. We always had what we needed. I really kind of wanted to make this more of like a question and answer style, also. So that's pretty much all I have, other than, you know, be a stakeholder in your child's education, be involved, check in with them. And when they say, if you say, how was school today? And they say good, ask more questions, annoy them. That's probably what they want anyway. But get to the bottom of it. Be involved in your child's education. It makes a really big difference. So, but yeah, I just wanted to open it up to questions personally for me. I'm sure that there's a Q&A at the end. Am I right? Okay, then I will accept questions now or at the end, whichever you prefer. But that's just a little bit about my personal experience with having dyslexia, but also working in an alternative learning environment.
I say, let's open it up for you right now.
Okay, sure.
Strategies to throw out there too that they've used. So let's just open it up.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Were you surprised whenever you took the test and you were like, oh, okay, maybe I'm dyslexic? Was it like a very, very shocking thing, or did you have like a suspicion?
Nope. So when I was, you know, growing up and going through school, dyslexia wasn't a hot topic. I'll be honest. I probably didn't even know what dyslexia was until I was in high school. Crystal Vogel at UCA is actually the one, she's the guru of all things dyslexia anyway. She's actually the one that I talked to and, kind of found peace with. I wouldn't necessarily say shocked. I think it was more of like a relief almost to know that I wasn't crazy, that this is not what everyone else sees or thinks, or, I'm not, there's not something necessarily wrong with me that's undiagnosed or anything like that. It was kind of just nice to finally have an answer, in all honesty. Was it crazy that it happened in college? 100%, but I've made it work this long. So yeah. Any other questions? If you ever do have questions, feel free to reach out. You can get my email from Dr. Calhoun or, the Cabot School District website, whichever you prefer. But thank you for allowing me to present. I really appreciate it. It's something that I'm passionate about, especially even more so now, experiencing it for myself, but also I have a son. And it's something that I want to make sure, we're on top of from the beginning. And also, like I said, working in an alternative learning environment with students that are on a non-traditional path to graduation. So I'm happy to help in any way I can.
I'm going to put a different hat on all of a sudden from the educator to the mom, because I'm going to piggyback off some things Mallorey said. As a parent, I think the awareness needs to be there. When our kids leave our homes and they go into pre-K, kindergarten, wherever their educational career begins, I think it's being aware every day when they come home and we're listening to them, we're watching them, even their play, watching how they play and the things that they say during their play. And then if we recognize that there is something occurring, and Mallorey used the word, and I use this a lot, it's about being an advocate for your child. We noticed very early on that Mallorey struggled with reading. And I think the biggest aha came when she had a friend that came over to spend the night and they were both reading. And I saw heard such a distinct difference in their fluency. And I remember sitting back that night and having the realization that something was just not right. And so that next step was to seek help, to be an advocate for her and to seek help. And that's where the partnership between home and school is so important. And it goes back to relationships again. Relationships between the student and the teacher is extremely important. It's foundational. I mean, it's all. But it's also about relationships between families and schools and families and teachers, and being able to go in and have those honest conversations and be able to get to a point where you're problem solving for your child, what's best for them. Before she went to second grade, I made an appointment with her teacher and went in and said, here's what's occurred first grade. Here are our ahas. Here's what we've done over the summer to try to help her. I want you to know before she enters your classroom what she's facing, and I want to know what we can do together to help her. And her second grade teacher's name was Susan Korn. And I remember from day one, because Susan was aware of Mallorey's needs, she supported her, not just academically. She made Mallorey feel like she could do anything. I mean, honestly, she built her confidence from day one. And Mallorey didn't tell you this, but she actually had the most points for AR that year. And we were still doing accelerated reader at that time. And she got the award at the end of the year. But it was those little successes along the way in second grade, I think, that started to build her confidence academically. So that when she went to third grade, we had another conversation with the teacher about what had transpired first grade, what had transpired second grade, and what could we do in third grade to add value to her academically, but also socially and emotionally. And she mentioned both of those teachers. And I think it's because the partnerships, the relationships between home and school were built, as well as both of those teachers built very positive relationships with Mallorey and helped her soar socially and emotionally, which then bled over into the academic portion. So from the parent perspective, watch your kids, listen to your kids, recognize their emotions, help them realize their emotions are real. You know, if you're feeling frustrated, that's real. If you're angry, that's real. It's okay to feel those ways, to feel the way you feel, but what are we going to do about it? Let's learn some strategies, how to cope. Mallorey talked about not being organized. Okay, so what can we do to help you be organized? And a lot of times it's about asking them, what do you need to be organized? Sometimes I will say something like, well, this is what I do. And I'll give an example. I'm not saying it works for you, but here's an idea. What do you think will work for you? So I think it's just that being aware as a parent, listening to your kids, and then being an advocate for them. And that's the mama perspective for me talking right now. Build those relationships with the schools, with the teachers. This is a mirror of this girl of mine's life now. Stephanie's talking. Tell us more, Stephanie.
I just wanted her to listen. I texted her and said, come in this room, because Ryan has very similar stories and she can name off teachers that have been supportive along the way. And now having to advocate for herself, you know, for her accommodations and having dyslexia in high school, it's getting easier, but you know, it was a challenge. So I'm just letting her listen.
Awesome. 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 Well, I'm saying as a parent, keep your expectations high, not unrealistic, but keep them high, because just because a student has challenges academically does not mean they can't succeed. I had challenges and I feel like I've been pretty successful. Am I perfect? By no means. Do I make mistakes? All the time. Mallorey struggled academically, but she learned the skills along the way, and she's been successful academically by people. It's about the people that are supporting her, giving her what she needs so that she can be successful. So relationships, relationships, relationships. So that's Mallorey's story. Now, Emmeline's story, I'm going to toss it to you.
Hi, y'all. So I'm Emmeline. I am an intern 1 student, about to go into internship 2. I have been with the LC department for like roughly 2-3 years now. I was first diagnosed with dyslexia in 1st grade. I was privately tested because my teacher, she was like, listen, she's highly intelligent, but she's really struggling to read. So my mom took me to get privately tested, and I'm dyslexic. So I didn't end up going into SPED classes until 3rd grade, and I was in SPED classes for about 6 years. And within those SPED classes, I was also in tutoring for about 2 years. And then once I got up into high school, I had accommodations, but I wasn't in SPED anymore. And now that I'm in college, I now have accommodations back because of Miss Miller. She really helped me get my life together this semester. But the biggest advocate I've ever had was my SPED teacher, Miss Dee Dee Horton. I don't even know how to describe her. She reminds me a lot of Dr. Calhoun. And if you just know Dr. Calhoun, that's really just Miss Horton. She has like a big heart, and she cared more about her students than I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. She cared about us as people more than just us learning content. And I felt like that was when I started to accelerate in academics, is whenever I started to understand that my dyslexia would only hold me back as far as I'd let it hold me back. My biggest, I think the thing that made me different than most dyslexics was my mom made me get very comfortable with my dyslexia, which was very difficult. She didn't know anything about it. My dad didn't know anything about it. So it was a really hard struggle for us to do research, because this was way back when dyslexia was like, it was like a thing, but it wasn't a thing yet. So we did a lot of research and we talked a lot to Miss Horton, and we finally like processed what it was, and I got very comfortable. And it got to the point, like in high school, I would be able to talk about it with my peers, and that made school a lot easier for me because it I struggle still now with other people pointing out where I spelled things wrong or had grammatical errors. But whenever I'm able to sit down and talk to my peers and be like, hey, this is why this happens, it's not that I'm any less intelligent than you are. It's just because this is where I struggle. It improved my relationships. And the only reason I was able to do that is because Miss Horton and my mom made me feel so comfortable in my own diagnosis. So, as a parent and as a teacher, I highly suggest not making it like just like, oh, she's dyslexic. Ooh, like, no, just be comfortable because it's not that big of a deal. And it's a lot more common. Like, I thought I was special growing up. I was like, I'm dyslexic. I didn't realize it was as common as I thought. So I think that's really funny. But one thing I've been writing down all of this stuff that I wanted to share with you. And I feel like because I was able to learn about my diagnosis, be comfortable with diagnosis, I was able to be more aware of myself and my self-awareness from Castle. And that made me feel more comfortable to do things that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. And I was talking to Miss Harrington in the LC department, and one thing that I felt like I've grown on something I never thought I'd be comfortable with is reading aloud to my students. I have always been scared of that. That's been my biggest fear, but I've been able to do that with fourth graders, and fourth graders are scary. They are brutal. But being able to read to them gave me such self-confidence without, like, even though I messed up every once in a while, because I was so comfortable with it, that it was okay. Some things that have helped me over the years are being an advocate for myself. So one way I did that is I would go to all my teachers or my professors before either like the first week of class or before class, and I would just say, even like before they got a message from the accommodation centers, I'd just say, hey, listen, I'm dyslexic. This is what has helped me in the past. If you have any questions or you want to talk about it, I would love to talk about it. It's not going to affect your class unless I spell something totally wrong and you don't know what I'm trying to say. Just message me and I'll just fix it, because sometimes I don't even know what I'm trying to say. To-do list have helped me significantly. And my mom making me to-do list did not help me, but when I sit down myself and make my to-do list, I can get all my stuff knocked off. And then I think just positivity around dyslexia has been my biggest benefit from like my schooling experience, and why I feel like I'm going to be a great educator is I learned how to be positive with stuff that most people are uncomfortable with. So yeah.
Okay, does anybody have questions for Emmeline?
I don't have a question, but I just want to commend you for being so comfortable with your diagnosis. I think that that's really going to help you in the classroom when you enter, even internship 2 next semester, and into the education field. That is going to be a huge benefit to you and to all of your students. They're going to get to, you're going to get to teach them empathy through your own experiences, and kind of show them the adversity you've overcome. And it's really going to help you be able to connect with your students. So I'm really glad that I got to hear your story tonight.
Thank you.
I think as a mom, sorry.
You go right ahead.
As a mom that's of a third grader now, we had a really good second grade year that he got diagnosed in first grade, had a great second grade year. The transition to intermediate school has been hard, and we're trying to work on the advocating for himself instead of us. And like, what age and how do you make that transition to where they do it more for themselves instead of you being the one that pushes for them as much?
It was a, from what I remember, and I do not have the best memory, I did talk to the teachers I immediately felt comfortable with in middle school. I never did it in elementary school because I was pulled out for sped and I just didn't know how to communicate that yet. Like, I knew that I was dyslexic and I could say, oh, I struggle with spelling, stuff like that. But I didn't understand that that was a diagnosis, and that was just a different part of my brain read differently than most people's. So I think I didn't start advocating for myself until I was at least in middle school. And I think it's because my mom pushed me. She made me feel like I could go and talk because I deserved my accommodations. So that really helped.
What grade was middle school for you?
I want to say it was about 7th grade.
That's really what I'm gonna say too. It was about 7th grade. Like, as an educator, we start inviting students in 7th grade in my district to attend their 504 or their IEP meetings, things like that. So they are aware of those accommodations and why we're here and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And they get to really have a voice. I think teaching him to advocate for himself now is a fantastic idea. But at the same time, like I said, the educator in me, I'll be honest, even as a student in me, I don't know if I would have felt comfortable going to my 3rd grade teacher. And we had a great relationship. I could tell her, hey, I'm struggling, or I don't get this, but I'm not sure that I could say, hey, this is what's going on. I need XYZ. I know that my mom has always done that for me, probably through middle school. I really think 7th grade is when I personally started advocating for myself, I guess is a good way to put it, and didn't need so much of my mom's backbone. I kind of had learned to get my own at that point. And I do think it was from watching my mom do it for me for so long, and in knowing that she had my back if something did go south.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You know, I want to piggyback off what they said too, and it's the teaching part as a parent. And I'm looking through the parent lens. We're their role model. So as their advocate early on, they see us, they hear us, they watch us, you know, how we're advocating for them and the language that we use and the way we interact with their teachers in their school and our perception of their school, and their, you know, they hear and they see, and they're absorbing that, and that they're learning how to become that positive advocate through what we model for them. And I know Mallorey said by watching me. And I think it's kind of that gradual release model. You know, it's the parent does it at first, and then the child and the parent do it together. And then hopefully every child's different, but they get to that independent phase where they are an advocate for themselves. And I think it depends upon the child. Some of them are ready earlier than others. And I think it's about just equipping them with the knowledge and the skills that they need to be a positive advocate for themselves.
As a high school student, I'm sorry, I didn't want to barge in, but as a high school student, it took me like a while because I was like on the road to like starting to advocate for myself. And then I had a teacher like call my name out in class saying like, come get your test read aloud, like in front of everyone. And that's like very embarrassing, I feel like. And so that really like upset me. And I think that like pushed me back. So I didn't start advocating for myself probably until like after, like towards the end of like 9th grade year, because like it was just, I think that would happen because that happened at the beginning of 8th grade. So whenever that happened, it was like junior high, and it's just like a whole bunch of new kids. I don't know these people, and they're gonna think I'm like dumb because I'm getting called out to get a test read aloud. So I think that was like really embarrassing. It's really like upsetting because I was almost there to being able to do it by myself and to advocate for myself. But since that happened, it like set me back for like a whole like year.
And she's a junior now and she's doing a good job of that, but sometimes we have to still have those conversations like, did the teacher provide accommodations? And she'll say, well, I had to remind, or, and so it's just, and I know because being a teacher, well, maybe I don't know because I remembered to give the accommodations, but maybe as a teacher, we forget nowadays. I don't know, but so trying to also teach them when you have those conversations to be respectful and helping the teacher just, understand, hey, I just want to be sure I, have the same chance as everybody else. And so we're working on it, but it's good for her to hear you all and your success stories, and she's learning so that by the time she gets to college, she'll be able to do those things like Emmy was saying in Mallorey and be able to verbalize, straight away to the professor. So
Yeah.
I think a very big thing for me, and Miss Miller has definitely helped me this semester with this, but I have really struggled. This was a thing I struggled with in the past, and this thing I still struggle with today. It's hard for me to remember that accommodations it's not an easy way out for me. I'm not like cheating or getting all like extra attention. I'm getting a level playing field, and that's something that's really hard for me to remember. So like the past few semesters, I will admit I have been slacking on my accommodations when I could have just been on a level playing field when I put myself at a harder journey when I didn't have to. So I hope that you still advocate for yourself if you go to college, if you want to go to college, and keep those accommodations, and just remember that that's like a level playing field. That's not like cheating or getting any extra attention or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I heard someone say one time, or I read it, I can't remember which one it was, but it's going along with what you're saying, Emmeline. If someone has vision issues and they have a prescription for glasses, does that mean that's unfair? No, that's what they need. That levels the playing ground. What's the same way with, in y'all's case, with dyslexia? It's what you need to have that level playing ground. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You were talking about the teacher not making or calling your name out, about having it read out loud, which I hate that happened to you, and I'm sorry, because that is a blow. I mean, I get that, and I said I was a struggling learner, so I feel it. I think that's a teachable moment, though, a learning moment of, okay, you're going to run into people like that. You're going to run into teachers, you're going to run into friends, you're going to run into people and just the world that are like that. And it's a learning moment of, okay, how can I approach this a different way to ensure that the person, teacher, friend, or whoever understands my perspective, why I need this. And sometimes, people do things. I've done things when I didn't realize the impact it would have on someone else, but when it's been brought to my attention, then I'm like, oh, I get it. So when we know better, we do better. So sometimes it's about having that private conversation with the teacher to help her or him understand that it was embarrassing and that you need that so that you can succeed academically, and that you would prefer that when your test has to be read aloud, that it's not announced to the whole class. That's being an advocate for yourself, but it goes back to what your mom said. It's about how we say it. It's not all the time about what we say, it's how we say it. So being respectful in things, but being an advocate for yourself. And I would encourage us as parents to teach our kids how to be those advocates from a positive perspective.
Well, and when he called her name out, she just pretended she wasn't there that day, right? And so then came home because then got in trouble for not. So it snowballed, but we got that taken care of. But it's a learning game for us too, because even though we're educators, it's our child, and it's like, or it's you yourself, and so you don't quite know how to navigate any of it until you've made the mistakes.
No, and I am I don't want to say mama bear because my students aren't my kids, but I am very quick to become mama bear when things like this happen, because I want them to, have what they need. And, feel successful, because that's ultimately what I want. I want them to be confident in who they are and what they're capable of, and, go out to be a successful citizen, regardless of what path they take. And I work with seniors every day that have had experiences like this. And unfortunately, this is an experience you're never going to forget. It's one that you'll probably remember for the rest of your life. And I hate that. But as an educator, I feel like that's my job, to keep things like that from being at the forefront of your head, or, your brain, when you are in my classroom or when you're in my school, and kind of changing that stigma. And a lot of it goes back to that self-awareness piece, or that empathy piece, that is so important with social and emotional learning, because if this were ever to happen to someone else in a class that you're in, you can immediately relate to that person. You can't, I don't know if you plan to go into education, but I can promise you that the first time you get a dyslexic student, you get this hot feeling, and you just automatically just want to go hug this child and give them everything that you possibly could to help them be successful and feel confident, because you don't know if they've ever felt that way before. So I hope that you, like Dr. Calhoun, my mom said, I hope you do use it as a learning experience. I hate that it happened to you, like I said, but it really is a teachable moment for things that you can use in the future.
I don't know if y'all can see Jerry's comment, but she is saying yes to what you're all saying. This is what we have faced, not thinking he needs his accommodations. So then he questions it. Any other feedback? Because she's saying, yes, this is what's happening with her son.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask Emmy, and my screen's really small. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of our first presenter. Was it Mallorey?
Yes.
Yes.
Mallorey and Emmy, is because I am, and Emmy can attest to this, I'm very much in my students' business about, if there's information prior to school starts, like I'm in the summertime, hey, you and I need to set up a meeting before school starts, because although I received this from the Department of Disability Services, explain to me, is this going to be enough? Are you going to need something extra on top of that? Is there something else that I can do, to better help you that maybe, they didn't list, or you didn't know how to ask them for it? I'm providing, individual surveys every 2 weeks is what we're doing in class working. I change up my office hours so that, to better accommodate. And it's still, kind of like I had to force Emmy's hand a few days ago. I'm like, listen, this is something. Well, I'm talking right now.
He has input, Catherine. He wants to share.
Well, I rarely get to use my own phone. I rarely get to use it. But yes. So for me, I guess I'm asking, how can I better communicate, to college students, to, I guess, get them to understand that, hey, this stuff is here to help you. It's here to, assist you. So that they do come in, that they do use their supports, or that they feel comfortable with using their supports, because this semester has really been like, pulling teeth in trying to get people to understand that, hey, there may be something more going on here that has nothing to do with, just your academics, that, like maybe mentally you're not well, or are you getting access to the right foods, because it may be messing with your emotions. If you're not, I don't know. It's just really been a struggle of, how can I communicate to students in an effective way that, hey, I understand that the content and all that is great and important, but I'm really more focused on how are you as a person, because if we can get you together as a person, then we can get you access to the content. But until we realize, how you're processing emotions, which they can determine like how you're accepting feedback, or how you're accepting, having a conversation, with the person, I'm just like, how do you talk to people? Because it hasn't worked this semester. So I'm just like, I need all the help, all of it.
I will say that the way that okay, so Miss Miller pulled me in and we talked about it, and we talked about next semester, and she asked me why she never received an email about my accommodations this semester. And that's when I admitted I did not submit my stuff for needing accommodations. And when I say this, I don't mean it like I have a really big head. I just mean I didn't feel like I needed them, because I still struggle with seeing accommodations for myself. I understand for other students why they need accommodations. And like even today, I was in for internship, I was in a PLC helping with RTI. And I could see where students needed help and where they got accommodations, and I gave suggestions for some accommodations, but I really struggle with my own. But the way you addressed it with me helped me, because it made me feel like I deserved them, and I think that was something that was really hard for me to process, if that makes you feel any better.
I think regardless, it's human nature to accept that you're not the same, or that, that there's something, I don't want to say wrong with me. But I mean, my brain is literally not wired the same as someone else's. And I think honestly, having the brain research behind it has made a big difference for me personally, because I realize that this is not like something that I did. It's the way that I was born. It's the way that my brain was wired. I think that helped a lot. But I also think it's just human nature not to want to accept things like that. There is a negative stigma surrounding accommodations. I see it every day. I'm the test coordinator for my building, and I'm a 712 building. So we're talking ACT Aspire, map testing, work keys. I mean, I do all of it. And I have kiddos every day that deny like text to speech. And they're in a small group away from everyone else, and they'll still deny it. And I think the negative stigma, but I also think that students don't know how to utilize it successfully. I don't think they've ever been taught. And I don't mean like how to click the button that says text to speech. I mean, they don't know how to hear the words and read along with the words and make notations as they're reading. And, the same strategies that you would use in a traditional classroom when you guys are reading aloud, and, you underline the question, or, you are highlighting keywords, whatever the situation might be. I think that they just don't know how. Unfortunately, that's something that I'm actually pushing for right now in my building, because I did not have one student accept text to speech on ACT work keys this past week, and I had 5 that could have, and none of them did. So before we take ACT in February, sorry, when we take it at the end of February, I want to make sure that they have all the keys to success. They have the right to turn it down. That's on them. I'm going to feel better as an educator and as someone who suffers from dyslexia and would benefit from text to speech myself if I can teach them how to successfully use those accommodations. And I know that's just adding one more thing to a teacher's plate, but I do think that it might make a difference. I keep going back to Jerry's statement, though, about how he feels like he doesn't deserve them or doesn't need them. And I'm really coming up blank. Emmy, can you think of anything I want to be able to give her something.
Well, I'll just say, when I was younger, I knew that, when I was in middle school, it was easier for me to accept those accommodations now, because I think now that I've gone through a lot of the education program, I can see the whole, I understand the big picture of dyslexia that has been presented to us. But when I was in 7th grade, accepting those accommodations helped me, because I understood that those helped me just it's like the glasses thing that Dr. Calhoun said. Those helped me see. Those accommodations helped me see. And I think the biggest thing was I had a 7th grade teacher who would do weekly quizzes, who would have the 1, 2, 3 ABC test. It was on my accommodations. I could not do those because I would just mess it, like fail every single time. Because transferring the letters just did not work for me. But I think it took me seeing everybody else's test that had those, and then mine, which was the same exact test, except it was multiple choice, seeing the difference between the two, and I would get 100 and they would get 102. And that really helped me understand, was seeing that I'm just as smart as them. I just need a different format than they do. I don't know if that helps or not, but
I think I hear both of you saying, and it's one of the 5 competencies of Castle. The first step is awareness, and I think it's finding out, having a conversation and finding out, why does he feel like he doesn't need the accommodations, and helping him build an awareness of why he has those. And as Emmy said, Mallorey said, lots of us have said about, it's just like someone who needs glasses. They're there to level the playing ground. But I think the first thing when you look at Castle with awareness, I think that's the first step, is finding out, why does he feel like he doesn't need the accommodations? Because there's a root cause to that, why he feels that way. It could be that he feels like other people are watching and he doesn't want them to know, or doesn't want to seem different when he's really not different. We all have something where we struggle, but just that awareness being built, and then helping him learn how to manage those feelings that he's having regarding those accommodations. And it takes time. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a maturity thing. Also, I'm sitting here just really smiling on the inside, thinking about how open we are about, I was a struggling learner. The girls are saying, or the ladies are saying, I have dyslexia. I hope we can get to that point where our kids in our homes and in our schools feel safe enough to accept who they are for who they are and what they bring to the table, and that everybody's a struggling learner at some point. And it's all about being aware of what is your struggle. How can you manage that so that you can go on to be successful? I hate to say this, it's almost 7:20. I have a meeting with a student at 7:30 on Zoom, so I'm gonna have to get off. But I am very appreciative, Emmeline, Mallorey presenting, colleagues being here. Jerry, so glad you're at the table. I know that we can continue the conversation if anybody would like to. And if anybody has anything that's good for the group before we adjourn, please, speak up, unmute yourself and speak up.
I don't have anything.
I just want to.
If anyone has any specific questions or concerns, anything that comes up, over the course of however long in the future, just reach out to me. I'm always happy to help.
I just wanted to thank both of you, really everyone, for having the courage to speak up and say, hey, I needed help, I struggled, and to share your experiences with us, because we read so much stuff that's research, and to see actual action research from real live people it's completely different. So I appreciate that. And I definitely applaud you, Mallorey, for what you're doing in the alternative learning environment. I'm a product of the alternative learning environment, so I completely understand, on that level. So I just want to tell both of you and everyone else here tonight, thank you.
Yeah, y'all did great. I'm with you, Catherine. Research is great, but when you can hear it straight from the mouth of the person that's experiencing it, it takes it to a whole different level. Jerry, is there anything you would like to add or ask before we adjourn?
I don't think so. Thank you guys all for allowing me to be here and your thoughts and comments. Thanks, girls.
Absolutely.
We applaud you for being here as a parent. That says a lot about you. Okay, if there's nothing else good.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I think we're done for the night.